Thank you. So before I start, just a few words on Charity Entrepreneurship itself. It's not only a research and training program aiming at starting high-impact charities, but it's also an idea that almost everybody can start high-impact charities, and that we need more high-impact charities in our movement in order to help animals. But before I'll start talking about the program, how to start high-impact charities, and introduce new charities that got started this year, I would like to look back a little bit. Look back at an intervention that we might consider the most successful. I think I consider it the most successful intervention that we did for animals. And I think lots of people in this room would agree with me. If you assume that 100% of the corporations who signed the pledge to help hens kept in cages, around 150 million egg-laying hens are going to be protected by the pledge. It's an enormous success. However, according to FAO 2016, 4.4 million hens are farmed globally, which means that only under 10% of egg-laying hens are going to be covered by the pledge. It's quite dramatic to think that our biggest success is not even helping all 100% of animals that we wanted to help. But of course, we did way more than just corporate campaigns for cage-free. On the other hand, if you look at how vast the problem is, we might be thinking, okay, cage-free is very important. It's one of the issues we should solve. But cage-free is not the only issue we should be dealing with. Even if hens will be completely out of cages, they still need our help. There's way more suffering happening in their life than just cages. And hens are not the only animals that need our help. There are broilers, there are fish, there are horses. All of our animals on the planet need our help. But it's not only animals, it's also countries. We can look at the countries where we're already having enormous success. We can look at whole European Union. We can look at United States of America. But there are still lots of gaps. Most of the production, almost 50% of the production is happening, animal production is happening in China. What about India, Indonesia, Bangladesh? You can see that US is only 2% responsible for 2% of global production of animal products. There's still huge gaps that need to be covered by other organizations, by our movement, by our activists in order to fully help animals. The problem we are facing is truly vast. I don't need to talk about it. I think we are all aware how big the problem is. So why to start new charities? Why just not expand to run bigger charities? Why not to expand to other countries, to other issues, to other animals? There are 3 reasons for that. For example, before absolutely scaling one organization, we'll need a little bit more research and evaluation to make sure that we are having an impact rather than just feeling that we have the impact. I think if you look at our twin brothers and sisters in different cause areas, when you look, for example, at global poverty or global health, there's a lot of organizations focusing just on trying to find the highest impact thing we can do, for humans in that case, or evaluating charities. If you look at the pure number of external organizations working on evaluation and research, there's like 10 to 15 in global poverty or global health, not even counting all the research that organizations themselves are doing. And in animal advocacy, we have 2.5 free research and evaluation charities. They're doing an enormous job. They are carrying the weight of the whole movement to find the highest impact thing and to evaluate all the charities. But I think we need more. And I think that having more charities in such a low evidence-based space basically will lead to much more robust and effective movement. If one organization will try one intervention, it's not going to work out. Okay, then like maybe the effort of that organization was lower impact than we expected. But if there will be more organizations working on different issues, basically we make sure that even if, for example, evidence will come back showing, hey, it's not as impactful as we hoped for. Of course, that will be tragic and will be sad. But at the same time, it wouldn't be catastrophic. We'll have other organizations who are fighting for other issues, who are fighting for other species, who are fighting in different countries. So we kind of might make sure that one failure is not going to lead to failure of the whole movement. So it becomes more robust and more effective. And I think once organizations grow large enough, they solidify. What makes changes really, really hard? Because you need to talk with volunteers, you need to talk with funders, you need to talk with yourself as a leader of an organization or a volunteer. What we want to do, where do you want to move with our organization? So I think that makes change hard, even if the new evidence comes up and it shows that maybe we should be doing something else to have even higher impact. But there is a solution to it. So with Charity Entrepreneurship, we help people to start effective animal advocacy charities. We do this by running incubation program for people who want to start impactful nonprofits. Who is the program for? The program is for people who are ambitiously altruistic, which means they really truly care about impact, and not just about having any impact. It's for people who want to do as much as they can to help animals. And also that's for people who wish they had control to improve an organization. Maybe you see some flaws, maybe you see something, area of improvement, but you don't have space to do it because it's complex, of course. But if you want to take a leadership, a leadership role in a new organization, that's what we can help you with. It's for people who are open-minded, who can look for the highest impact thing we can do, who are resilient to deal with everyday stress, who are creative and results-oriented, and the most important aspect, who are self-motivated to actually start up and start new successful charity. And what we can offer to you, we can help you to develop measurement and evaluation system to make sure that you have highest impact you can. We can help you with basic statistics to understand the concept better, to evaluate what's working, what is working and what not. But we'll help you also with everyday mundane tasks like task management or organizational prioritization, or even how to do a budget or how to register your charity. But we also can help you with finding a founder, dealing with conflicts in your organization, and how to approach a public relationship and how to become a truly transparent organization. And after the camp, you will receive both funding, so you don't need to be stressed at the beginning of the organization if you can have money to run for the next 6 months or not, so you can truly focus on getting the work started. We also offer mentorship to help you with the daily challenges you might be facing when you're starting your organization. We help you with legal incubation or funding or gaining connections in the field. But also we provide community of people who, like you maybe in the future, are starting charities and started successful high-impact charities, and who can offer both knowledge, skills, and also emotional support in those tough times that might come. But how do we know which charity is the most needed? What charity to start? And I think that choosing an idea can be the hardest part, yet it's the most important. We might have the most capable leader in the movement, but if they're throwing paint on the street, they might be very competent. But if they're doing that, it's not going to help a lot of animals. So of course, it's very important to have capable management and leadership in an organization. But I think it's even more important to have good idea, good intervention. And I think if you would only compare our one option to the status quo, to something that our organization is already doing, and look at this new exciting option that comes up, and kind of compare our current actions with the new option, of course, it's always going to be better to compare more options than less. But at the same time, I think it's worth to systematically compare over hundreds of ideas at the same time, to not leave impact on the table, to not miss this one opportunity where we can have amazing, huge impact for animals. So what we did, we literally took over 100 ideas. We conducted a survey, expert survey, asking everybody in the field, or as much people as we could in the working animal advocacy space, to list all the activities that might be important for animals, something that might be the highest impact thing for animal. And we took all of those ideas, we generated additional ideas from our expertise and experience in research, and we started to compare them. So we focused at the beginning on getting broader understanding, talking with lots of people, watching industry guidance on how to farm animals, so we can gain different perspectives as well. We read hundreds of books. And once we had that, we started to work on priority reports. We researched which animal is the most important one to focus on, who needs our help the most. Then we focus on priority countries. How likely it is that the country we've been born to is the best country to work for animals. I think for some people it was lucky. They was born in European Union or US, and they had amazing, beautiful impact for animals. But for other people, sometimes maybe going to different countries better, where animals need us more. So we took all the countries and we prioritized them based on expected impact. And we also look at priority asks. Asks are the things that we're asking corporations or governments for. For example, cage-free was an ask. We ask you to switch to cage-free farming. And at the end, we looked at approaches, and we compared all the approaches: corporate outreach, to governmental outreach, to individual outreach, to food technology, or to even meta charities like research charity or talent charity, and compare all of them together. And at the end, once we had the research in all of the fields, we combined it together into charity ideas. How we did it? So first, of course, as the most important step is to develop method, how to measure impact and how to measure what it actually means to help animals and to what extent, how to compare different options. So for example, we had to develop method to figure out how to compare impact of working on pesticide control, so we reduce wild animal suffering, to for example, working on cage-free ask through corporate outreach. It's very hard to compare between different species. It's even harder to compare between different interventions and different approaches. So we develop a system to do it. The system is called welfare points, where we basically boils down the experiences of animals to point estimate on a scale from -100 to +100. +100 being totally utopia, like the best place you can imagine for animals. And -100 is like something the worst condition you can imagine for a given animal. I won't go into details of any of the research we did. I just want to point out what we did and kind of what are the conclusions from it. But if you'd like to talk about details of that, I'm very happy to talk with you about it. So once we had the method, we started with animals. We compare different conditions of different animals in different conditions on multiple criteria. Not only at like what's the mortality rate, but also, are animals stressed? Are they experiencing anxiety? Or are they hungry or thirsty? Are there any biological indicator that they actually stress? Maybe we can look at the cortisol level. So we look at multiple criteria and research all of the species in multiple conditions to see how their life look like when it comes to welfare. We also looked into priority countries. As I mentioned, we took all of the countries, we prioritized them based on production and consumption of animal products. And then the most promising countries with the biggest scale of the problem, we compare again on multiple criteria. We not only looked, for example, at attitudes toward farm animals, but we also looked, for example, how easy it is to run a charity in a different country. China might be an amazing country to work in and very promising country to work in when you look at the scale. 50% of animal production. It's amazing. If you could affect lives of animals there, beautiful. The problem is government won't let you do it. And that's why we need to look at multiple criteria and not only one criteria that is scale. So we look at 7 different criteria and compare all of the countries. And of course, what country you're working in is going to depend on the ask, the approach, and animals you're targeting. But we kind of provide the overview of that. And priority ask. We look at multiple interventions, both for wild animals, for farm animals, for insects, and we compare them on multiple criteria as well. We look at strength of idea, how cost effective it is, how much we can do for $1. What's the evidence behind that? But we also look at different factors like limiting factors or how hard it is to execute this intervention, but also at externalities. What is going to be long-term effect of this ask? And so once we had that, we looked into approaches. So we looked into, should we do corporate outreach? Should we do governmental outreach? Or maybe rather we should start meta charity that's going to help other charities to become stronger. And our program is focusing on animals this year. But last year, we also focused on humans. What we did, we start 5 high-impact charities. Charity Science Health gave hundreds of thousands of mothers education through their phones to keep their family healthy. Fortify Health helped thousands of malnourished people get the nutrition they need to flourish. CCT Charity will help people to get the medical need they need. Tobacco taxation, fighting big tobacco taxation to reduce death and problems related to smoking cigarettes. And a mental health charity promoting using happiness instead of GDP as a metric for success and finding high-impact ways to improve people's happiness and lives. And of course, we also started animal charities, something that you might be interested in. But I think I'm not the person to talk about those charities. I think people who actually started them are the best people to talk about them. Thank you.
Thank you, Karolina. We would not be anywhere as we are today without her help, without the help of the whole Charity Entrepreneurship team. It's been really good. So we are the Fish Welfare Initiative, Tom and me, working on it. Our goal is to reduce as much fish suffering as we can. We're going to talk today about our charity, about FWI, but first we want to talk about why we should focus on fish as a movement. As you've heard, they're very neglected and they suffer quite a bit, and we just want to go over that and hopefully inspire some other orgs to continue working on fish and even up that work further. So fish face dramatic acute suffering throughout their lives. A few different things that occur to them that are really bad. Handling, so farmers take the fish out of water to handle them a few times throughout their lives, to vaccinate them, to move them from one pond to another. You can imagine what this is like if someone were to take you and hold you underwater for a time and how much you would dislike that. Transportation, so moving them from one location to another, especially going to slaughter. We've heard about in developing countries, it's especially an issue where sometimes they're put on the back of bicycles and buckets and crowded in there and then taken to market. And of course, slaughter is what we're probably the most familiar with. Most fish die in the world that we farm either by asphyxiation or by bleeding out. This is a process that can take up to a few hours. So it's quite horrific if you can imagine just a few moments of suffocation and imagine that spread out over hours. Also, fish face chronic misery during their whole lives. So bad water quality is perhaps the most important part, the most significant part of this suffering. From the different studies we've read, it seems like bad water quality is the most important indicator of negative welfare, and dissolved oxygen in particular is significant for water quality. Dissolved oxygen is the level of oxygen in the water. Fish, like all other animals, need oxygen to survive. If they have too low of levels of oxygen in the water, then they cannot survive and flourish. Fish are unable to express their natural behaviors in aquaculture because they're kept in tanks. And if you can imagine, fish were used to swimming long distances each and every day. Confining them to a small location is not super great for what they want to do. Other issues as well include disease, parasites, and overcrowding. Overcrowding in particular seems to contribute to bad water quality, which is why it might be really bad. Fish are farmed at a massive scale. Wild fish are also a huge issue for human-caused fish suffering. We focus mostly on farm fish because we influence their whole lives as opposed to the last moments of their lives. So it's hard to know how many fish individuals are farmed each year. The FAO only reports it in tonnage, which is indicative of how we view fish, not as individuals, but rather just units. But the good people at Fish Count have estimated that 73 to 180 billion fish are alive at any given point in fish farms. To put this into perspective, this is roughly the same number of humans that have ever lived in the history of our species. Further, to put this into perspective, there are about 60 billion farmed land animals alive at any given point. So even more farmed fish are alive than land animals, which land animals we primarily work on right now. Fish are extremely neglected, both by the wider society and including by our movement. Only a couple of undercover investigations have focused on fish. Few corporate campaigns have been run. Fish are currently the primary focus of no other organization. So why aren't we doing more as a movement? There are a couple reasons. There are bad reasons why we aren't doing more. This isn't such a problem for the movement, but a lot of people still labor under the delusion that fish aren't conscious. This is frankly not true. Science, the consensus has emerged that fish are in fact conscious. They can feel pain. They can recognize other individuals. They have memories. One species of fish even recently passed the mirror test for self-awareness, which is a test that is normally only passed by great apes like ourselves and some other species like elephants. Furthermore, fish suffering isn't visible. So this is a picture of a farm we visited. It's hard to tell what the fish might be experiencing in this setting, but upon closer inspection, we saw nips in their fins, in their tails, indicating aggression. We saw a few individuals with sort of growths or tumors. One fish was swimming on its side. They weren't moving around very much. From what we spoke with to the farmer, it looks like the water quality is probably quite poor for how crowded in they are and how much it's not particularly moving. There's probably poor oxygen. One book recommendation I would give to you for learning more about the capabilities of fish and how they're actually quite sentient and quite unique individuals. The book What a Fish Knows goes over this very well. Then there are some more valid reasons why we as a movement haven't focused on fish. So first, while we only farm a couple of major species of chickens and pigs, in some cases only one in certain countries, we farm 362 species of fish across the world. And these species are vastly different from each other. So some, for instance, like tilapia, they can do quite okay with large crowding that we would be concerned about if we saw. Or other species like trout or salmon, if you crowd them in like you crowd tilapia, they would quickly die. Most fish are in Asia. So in fact, 88% of the global tonnage of farmed fish produced come from Asia. 55% come from a single country. I'll give you one guess what country that is: China. And as a movement, we have yet to establish a very strong presence in Asia for a number of different reasons, but we are looking to change that. And fish are relatable. So where we can win a corporate campaign with pigs or with chickens, that's a lot harder to do with fish. It's a lot harder to mobilize public support around fish when they look so much different than us and seem so much different. And these reasons why we haven't focused on fish, we think as a group, as a Fish Welfare Initiative, only inspire us to work more. Because they're neglected, there's more reason to work on them and to reduce their suffering, because other people are not. Okay, so we'll talk a bit about how to go about choosing an intervention. One tricky thing with fish is that it's really hard to know what they need. There's a bunch of different ways we went over that we abuse fish as a species. So the main question you would ask when choosing an intervention is, which issue will allow us to reduce the most suffering? Very simple question, but in practice extremely difficult, especially for individuals like fish, where they have vastly different needs than other species, and where they're vastly different than us. It's not intuitive what they might need. We want to be careful to avoid any bias we have towards salience. So take a look at these two pictures. It's a graphic picture of fish slaughter. So the fish are having their gills cut. Probably takes some minutes, if not longer, to bleed out. Quite a terrible death that none of us would want for any animal. On the right, this is just a typical fish farm where the fish are crowded in there. Water quality's probably pretty questionable. So you can imagine what's likely going on there is that they don't have enough oxygen, the temperature is inadequate, they're crowded beyond what they would want. So they're suffering throughout their lives, that chronic suffering we talked about. But it's hard for us to tell that. So when choosing an intervention to work on, we should pay special attention to cases like this on the right, where it's not obvious that fish are suffering, but the total suffering spread throughout their whole lives could be vastly more. So one system for evaluating different interventions is the one Karolina already introduced, welfare points. This allows us to make interspecies comparisons, but also look within a species of fish or whoever and see which interventions we can run will do the most good for them. So we can imagine running an intervention based on promoting more humane slaughter for fish and sort of adjusting the index score up for how fish might improve with their welfare for that. Or we can imagine running an intervention where we increase dissolved oxygen levels for fish, and then looking at the different factors, death rates, disease and injury rates, et cetera, to determine how much their welfare improves off of that. Obviously, this is all very difficult. It's somewhat speculative because we really don't have a fully clear picture of what it's like to live in the subjective experience of another animal. But based on these different factors and some sort of chemical metrics like cortisol levels, we can get a good sense of what is good for a fish and what is really bad for them. So what do we do at the Fish Welfare Initiative? Two main stages of our organization. For the first 4 to 5 months, we're looking at some serious research to determine a few things. One, what the best ask is we can make for fish, so it's not immediately clear what that should be. Some that we're looking at include better dissolved oxygen levels, better water quality in general, more humane slaughter. We're researching which country we should work in. So like Karolina said, it's not necessarily the case that the country we happen to be born in is the country we can have the most impact for animals. We're also looking into the best approach we can take. So whether that's working with farmers or working with corporations, a corporate campaign like the movement has done with great success in the past, or legislative approaches where we approach governments. After we come to a preliminary conclusion on those issues, then we'll be working on implementation. At our heart, we are bleeding activists, and we want to be having direct impact for fish. So it'll be based off of the research we do. So I want to walk you through one promising intervention that we are currently considering. Obviously, this is very tentative right now. Looking at dissolved oxygen, that seems to be a very influential factor for fish welfare. Working in a country such as Taiwan, so where there are vast numbers of fish farmed each year, and where the animal movement has already had some preliminary success in working in that country, working with farmers. And one idea is to work with farmers, as they've already done in Taiwan, to implement sort of aeration equipment in the farms. This is basically as simple as adding a bubbling machine, which breaks the surface tension of the water to allow more air in, more oxygen in, which improves dissolved oxygen levels. So our vision as an organization, we aim to be systematic and evidence-based at every level. So it wasn't too hard, but we even had a short report where we looked at, should we even work at animals? Is that what we think is the most impactful issue to work on? And then Charity Entrepreneurship did a lot of great work in determining that fish are in fact an important issue to work on. And we envision ultimately an open wing alliance for fish. Fish suffering is vast on a massive scale. We definitely cannot do it all alone. So we're looking to partner with other groups to build a coalition, everyone fighting for fish as we have done already so valiantly for other animals. Our ultimate goal with all of this is moral circle expansion. We long for a world where fish are included within our moral circles. So you can imagine human progress, human society as a project of us slowly including our moral circles. First to only include or slowly expanding our moral circles. First to only include people in our tribe, later to include people of different nationalities, different races, different genders, and now we're pushing the boundaries even further as a movement on the frontiers to include other species as well. We envision that fish are also included comfortably in our moral circles. So how we can help you, we would love to talk with anyone about fish issues. We've done some preliminary research and we could share some of that with you and sort of help form your thoughts about fish. And we'd love to talk about charity entrepreneurship. The program was super beneficial for us for starting our charity, and we think it could be a good fit for other people who are inclined to start charities, animal charities in particular, for themselves. We are looking for feedback on our ideas and research. If you have thoughts about what I've shared today, if you think it's great, if you think it's terrible, definitely let me know. That would be very useful. If you have research that you've been doing on fish, we know some other orgs have already been doing some, and we think that's wonderful. We'd love to see any more done there. Lastly, if you have any connections to activists in Asia, we've spoken with some, but we're looking for more contacts to sort of get a feel for what it's like to work in the movement there. Lastly, I just want to thank all of you guys. It's been an honor to be here at this conference. Thank you for fighting for all animals, no matter how different they look from us. So you can go to the fishwelfareinitiative.org to find out more about our organization. Thank you.
Thanks, Haven. Hi, I'm Lauren. I am the founder of Animal Advocacy Careers. So our purpose is to find the most effective ways to bring more talent into the movement and connect talented and passionate individuals to more opportunities that are aligned with their skills. So how did we come to this intervention? So as Karolina spoke about earlier, Charity Entrepreneurship did some extensive research into what interventions might be the most promising for people to start. And they uncovered, when speaking to experts and leaders in the field, that one of the best ways a new organisation could provide value to the animal advocacy space would be to focus on bringing more talent into the animal advocacy movement. So interestingly enough, the initial survey wasn't actually targeted to find this intervention. It was a really broad question to understand from experts and leaders how we could actually provide value to the animal advocacy space. And as you can see in this graph here, it came out as as an area that had a really high consensus of being one of the most promising ways that we could help organizations in the space, and is why I chose to look into this intervention. And more broadly throughout this conference, I think we've all been talking about how we can support each other, and hopefully this charity will be successful in supporting other organisations to continue the great work they're doing and to help bring more people to them. So I've only been working on this for the last 3 weeks, but so far I've been researching deeper into this topic. And as you can see behind me, I've been looking into animal charity evaluators. And what they do is they conduct a survey once a year on the allocation of resources by animal organisations. And this is for the top 20 charities that they review. In 2017, it was that 2.2% of this was put towards capacity building. This has moved up to 3.7% in 2018, but it's still a really small proportion. And although I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because it means that the charities are focused on direct impact, and that means that they're bringing what they should do to the movement, it also means that there's a lack of resources that's actually directed towards understanding more broadly what we need in the movement. So it means that also those organisations that are focused on capacity building tend to be focused on internal capacity building. So looking at what they need as an organisation to grow. And so it's really neglected to be looking in a bigger picture what's needed in the movement and how we can actually improve each other and share those findings. So I've spoken to a few experts and leaders in the field to get a better understanding of the problem. And it does seem to vary by organisations, and this is by no means an easy thing to look into, as it's more or less a limiting factor for specific organisations. But one thing that they all have in common is that every single one of these organisations said that they would like more skilled people in their organisations who really care about their cause. So also, I feel like it's a really important time to be looking into this. The animal advocacy movement is growing. We're getting more support from external funders, and it becomes more crucial to understand how we build capacity for the movement for the future, where we've gone wrong in the past, and how we can model out a successful method of what to do as the need becomes bigger in the future. So one element of this will be that we need a lot more talented individuals working for these organisations to continue the great work that everybody's doing. And because these organisations are focused on impact, a lot of the recruitment methods are actually very reactive, and it can lead to a lot of great workers being lost along the way. So I've talked quite a lot about the organisational problems and where the intervention stems for, but I'd like to talk a little bit more about the problem from the candidate side. So I personally know a lot of talented people. They're really passionate about animals, and they care a lot, but they don't seem to be able to get a job in the animal cause. And it's absolutely not because they're not skilled and they're not talented people. But I started my childhood quite similar to, I suppose, many people in this room. I really cared about animals. My best friend was my dog, Chloe, and I spent most of my time trying to learn more about endangered species and how to raise money for the cause. And as I'm sure most of you had the same in school, you're told, you have to get a job. And the best career advice that I got was to do something that you're passionate about. So for me, that seemed really natural, that I would want to work with animals. And the only advice that was given to me at that point was to become a vet. This conflicted with me for a lot of different reasons. I'm not great at biology, so that was ruled me out straight away. But there was also some other issues that kind of conflicted with me. But it did leave me with a massive dilemma of what paths are actually open to me if I care about animals. So I feel like there's a really large area of lack of career path guidance, and most careers you're actually told exactly what you need to do to become successful. If you want to go and look in medicine, if you want to go and work in medicine, you need to do chemistry, biology, go and work in a hospital, and they all lead you to have a really high percentage of being able to be a capable doctor. However, there's very little research done into different career paths for animal advocates, what other opportunities are open to us, and how can we actually contribute to making a difference, which is what we all care about the most. Alongside that, there's a lack of understanding of what kind of experience is needed to be successful in these animal organizations, and therefore what kind of experience would it be beneficial for individuals to gain along the way so that they can contribute most back to the animal space when they do eventually get to work for these organizations. And so I think that this can lead to a lack of direction, and you can get a lot of passionate, ambitious people being put off by working in the movement who could have contributed a lot just because they don't understand what they need to do for the future. So quite a lot of this has been anecdotal and speaks to my personal experience. But hopefully it resonates with some people here in the audience. And the problem is real. There's a lot of talented individuals who are keen to contribute, but have either been put off by past rejections of actually applying for a job and being rejected without understanding really what they'd done wrong. Or maybe some people who haven't even considered animal advocacy as a career. So there's a lack of support for these individuals. And sometimes it can just seem like too daunting a proposition for really ambitious people, and they go and work into another space. And this is a massive loss to the movement. So I really think that this is something that needs to be worked on. So another thing is that, as it says here, it's a beautiful thing when a career and a passion come together. I'm really lucky because Charity Entrepreneurship has helped me to bring the two together. And I know that a lot of people in the animal community have very different backgrounds, skills and experience that they contribute back. But the one thing that we all have in common is that we first and foremost care most about reducing animal suffering and improving animal lives. So it's really great when we get to devote our career to doing that. But not all of us are lucky enough to know which skills they need to gain to do this. So very generically at the moment, for a high impact career, you're told to go and gain career capital by working at any organization and just gaining these really broad skills. But I want to look into, is that actually the best advice for the animal sector? Are these broad skills the right skills that people should be developing to give back to the animal organizations? Or is there actually a more efficient way for individuals to be contributing to reducing animal suffering? Is there a more direct route for us to be having impact? So this area is really neglected, and it seems very unclear of solutions. People can't develop the skills that they might need if they don't know what skills they need to develop. And organizations are so focused on impact that a lot of these recruitment methods are very reactive, and a lot of potential candidates can be lost along the way. So that is what brings me back to animal advocacy careers. So there's two aims of this. The first one is understanding more about the talent gap. So what does the animal movement need to help it to grow? To gain a better understanding of what skills are needed by individual organizations, what traits and characteristics make somebody a high impact worker, and what is needed to accelerate future growth in order to support the movement properly. So hopefully through this, we'll be able to work out what the future employee should look like and what skills we need to cultivate to contribute most to the animal advocacy space. The second is to make it easier and more accessible for people to get into the movement. So with a clear career path and opportunities, and hopefully to increase diversity into the animal movement. So good research into this is either light or non-existent, and therefore it leads to a lot of people being uncertain. So hopefully through this, we can encourage more people to work in the space. So the first project will be, what can we learn from history? So I will be conducting some research into what skills and experience have made people historically really great in organizations. From this, I'm going to look into, are there any trends or tactics that have been particularly fruitful to cultivate and accelerate people's learning in animal advocacy? And what kind of methods have actually been used to train people in certain skills? The second part of the research will be to look at what skills and experience are needed in specific organizations and animal advocacy in the future, so that we can identify the scope of the problem and tactics to solve it. So I will be doing a survey, and I would encourage that anybody who works in an animal advocacy career to please contribute back to this, so that we can understand what skills and experience you think have been particularly helpful for you developing a career, and what you think actually leads to people that you admire being successful in their roles. We're going to get a really broad consensus, hopefully, of different opinions, and through that come up with some different strategies of how to tackle the problem. So what's next? I'm going to continue to interview and build partnerships with key organisations about their specific needs, conduct further research into the causation of the talent gap, and create a centralised resource hub for individuals. And one of the biggest things that I'm going to be trying to do is to funnel more people through this here by increasing the top red bit, which is the awareness section. And so it means that we can hopefully have a larger pool of candidates for these organizations to be looking at. I'm going to be testing out a lot of different strategies to try and do this, and then I'll share my findings back with organizations, and hopefully we can all learn from each other. So how can I help? I can help people who are looking to get into these organizations and connect them to organizations that might be fitted to them. I can give visibility to fellow advocates on what kind of opportunities might be available to them in the future. And hopefully I will be able to support the animal community with what it needs to help attract more talent to them. Thank you very much, everyone. And I would love to continue this conversation with anyone who would like to talk about movement building, wants to talk about participating in the survey, or anyone who wants to discuss more about the talent gap, or who wants to consider working at Charity Entrepreneurship to start a charity. Thank you very much.
Okay, so a few words on how to get involved. Our program takes place annually. This year's program just ended, and the next one will open next summer, though we are opening our application process to people in the meantime. So if you're interested in starting your own charity and contributing to the whole movement to tackle the problems that are neglected by others, neglected by our movement, just because we don't have enough capacity, I greatly welcome you to apply and to contact us to talk about this opportunity. We put our helpful content for those interested and for those who cannot come during the camp. So we publish our research for free on our website. Everything is available there on charityentrepreneurship.com. And all the materials that could be helpful and to guide you through starting and running a high impact charity are also available on our website. And you can also talk to us today. We are having a meetup during the coffee break, just after Gabriel's talk in this room. So we are meeting next to the door, and we need next to the entrance to talk, and we can talk about the research, how to help the animals the most, and also how to start and run successful charity. And I'm sure Haven and Lauren are going to help and are going to share their experience as well and their expertise in that area. So I think we can all contribute to animal movement, but I think if we won't start new charities, if you, for example, can imagine that you can volunteer or work for an already existing organization, that's of course fantastic. That's amazing that you can contribute to that. And your help is going to be enormously appreciated by everybody in your organization, of course, and by animals who you're helping. But if you also look from the perspective of, if I'm not going to start this charity won't be started. If I won't help fish right now, fish won't be helped for the next 5 years or 10 years when the whole movement or other organization will have capacity to help them. So thinking from the perspective of like how much you can help individually, I think it's worth to consider starting your own charity as your career path. And I think we all be very happy to see you with us in the next summer camp. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these insightful and inspiring presentations, really. And we don't really have time for questions. Maybe one, if you really want to ask it. And if not, then this meetup, I think it's a great idea. So if you want to know more, then sure, come in next hour, right? Thank you. Thank you again, and thank you for coming.